thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain. And as always, we've got expert panelists here to take your questions and also show you some of the show and tells that they've got around their home and their garden. So let's just have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their specialty. So John, we'll start with you. Tell us about you and what you like to do in the garden.
Okay, I'm Main County Master Gardener. I like a lot of perennials, especially hostas, and I do have vegetables, and I like herbs. I have an herb garden. I've got an orchard. Just about anything that grows, I really do like. I've got a lot of indoor plants. I'm lucky that I'm helping teach at Schlarman High School, so I've got the resources of a greenhouse where I'm taking some of the plants. We are going to get cold here pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. If you happen to see my 7th grader around campus, make sure he's behaving, okay? All right.
My grandson is in 7th grade too, so.
Yes. Okay, well, you've got 2 to keep an eye on then. Yeah. All right, and now to the Dream Team, as I like to call them, our Peoria area ladies. And I just love that they're together. Karen, Ella, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your specialty. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to go first. I'm Ella Maxwell. I'm a horticulturist at Hare Nursery. I'm also a master gardener, and I just enjoy gardening, and I am looking forward to retirement and doing more gardening at my house. And I enjoy perennials primarily, and I'm in some plant clubs and garden clubs, and trees as well. So trees and shrubs. No grass.
Okay, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm an unemployed horticulturist, and like perennials, shrubs, houseplants.
All right, anything that grows. We have a nice cross section here of folks and their expertise. So you guys have brought a ton of show and tells. So let's jump in. John, you've got your first one. Take it away.
Right now, it's the time that goldenrod, which is this guy, and this is past its prime. It should be really pretty yellow, but that gets a bad rap in that people say, oh, the goldenrod is blooming, I'm having allergies, but it's not this plant that's giving you the allergy. This has a very sticky, heavy pollen, usually does not get airborne for very long, and if at all. And so unfortunately, at the same time that this is blooming, ragweed likes to bloom, and that is very proliferous in the air. So the goldenrod, it's beautiful. You can get bouquets out of it. It is a weed, but it gets a bad.
It's a pretty weed.
The other weed that I've got, and this is one that I am trying to get rid of in my yard. All of a sudden, this showed up and it's everywhere. This is called white snake root. And this is one that is quite toxic to animals, especially horses, cows, sheep, the type of animals that eat a lot of grass, and sometimes this grows in the pasture. This, if they are pregnant or have had a yearling, either a calf or a yearling horse, a foal, passes through the milk and will kill the youngster. So if you do have animals, if you have horses or cows out in the pasture, get rid of this. It's very distinctive, and it's got a kind of a little snow. You can see if I can make it stop shaking here, but it's white. It's very white. It's like a little snow. And this is what Abraham Lincoln's mother, they think, helped pass away from, because at the end of her life, she was drinking a lot of milk. And so if you have cattle, I would get rid of it if you can. And right now,
I've noticed I've got a lot of that around my border. I've seen it.
Right, and now's a good time to get rid of it, because it is an annual, and if you can break this off and get rid of this, burn it or bag it up, get rid of it, it won't resow for next year. Now's the time. You know where it's at because it's flowering.
As far as getting rid of it, trash it, burn it. What's the best method?
I would put it in plastic bags. If you can't burn, just put it in a plastic bag, go around, put it in there and tie it up and get rid of it.
Okay.
You
All
don't want
right.
it
So
to-
yes to goldenrod, no to the other.
Yep. A
Got
white
it. All right.
snake-
Thank you so much.
White snake root.
White snake root. Thank you very much. All right. Miss Ella, you've got some show and tells as well.
I do. Right now, we're getting a lot of questions out at the nursery in regards to some of the evergreens, just the way that our shade trees are beginning to color up or even drop some leaves. There are a lot of evergreens that will do this on an annual cycle in the fall. And one of them is the white pine. So this evergreen here holds its needles for a single season. And so now it's shedding all of these, and these wonderful needles are what's going to make that mulch underneath the white pine. But this is very evident for people that just put a new white pine in their landscape, and all of a sudden the interior, these older 2-year-old needles are dropping and they think their plant is dying. And it's they're just not aware of it. Next spring, the new buds will come out. It'll fill this all in again. It'll look dense again, and they don't know. But I have been known in fall cleanup to go over where they planted white pines around a tennis court, and I would rake up these beautiful, wonderful needles, and I would mulch my garlic with them, because I mean they're really kind of nice. Now this also happens in Arborvitae, and you can see some older things here, but rather than individual needles, they lose these branchlets. So again, if it's on the interior, don't worry about it. This is just normal shedding on some of your evergreens. And a lot of these Arborvitaes too also have cone production, and during the summer you don't really notice them because they're brown or they're green, but now they're starting to ripen and turn brown. So these cones, you know, there was a heavy cone set on some Arborvitaes this year, and the plant looks totally brown because of all these little pesky cones. So, you know, don't get worried. It's normal.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. And Karen, what have you got?
What I've got is a basket of peppers. So with the coming cold snap, peppers don't take low temperatures. So what I went out and did is I stripped all of the fruit off of the plants, regardless of what size they were. There were a few that were already red, but most of them were still green, and took them all off. Now these are poblano, and that's my preferred pepper that I like to use in cooking. So when you've got that many peppers that come all at once, well, what do you do with them? So what I do with them is I do a blistering of the pepper on my gas stove. And so I get the pepper skin all blistered up, and it's blackened. And then what you do is, once the pepper's blackened up, I throw it in a plastic bag, and it's all steamy, and I'll close the plastic bag and just set it aside and do some other things. So then when the pepper has cooled enough that it's not so hot to handle, I'll put on disposable gloves and rinse off all of that blackened tissue, because then your pepper doesn't have a thick, waxy coating on the outside for eating. Then what I do after I've gotten it all rinsed off is I'll just pretty much take all the innards out of the pepper, and so then you just have the pepper skin. So then what I flesh, yeah, the pepper flesh. So then what I do with this is, my favorite product in the kitchen is press and seal. And so I'll take a piece of that, and my pepper pieces, then I will individually kind of flatten them in this and then throw them in the freezer. And I've accidentally lost some in the freezer for 2 years, and there's no freezer burn on them when I go to use them. So it's nice that they're already, you know, prepped up, done, you know, they chop up really well, still frozen, and I throw them in my dishes.
So I have never heard of that method before. When you, with the outer coating, how does that work? I have never heard of it.
Well, the pepper has a thick skin. It's kind of a waxy skin on it on the outside. And for me, I don't really like that in my dishes. It's got a toughness sometimes to it, or thick, toughness. And so removing that, then you've got nice pepper flesh, so to speak.
Gotcha.
You haven't watched any cooking shows where they blister the peppers?
No.
And you still get that nice smoky flavor in the flesh.
Right. And you can do this on your grill as well,
Yeah.
where you can but you need to have a real high flame.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, that's fancy. I'm gonna have to look into that. All right. So now we're back around to John with a question. This one is from Stephen, and he says, is it better to cut down hostas in the fall or wait until spring? So perfect question for you, John.
I've got 300 varieties of hostas. So if I was to have to, in the fall, cut them all down and take the time, I would be out there forever. So you don't have to do that at all. You don't even have to do it in the spring. What happens if you let them freeze and just kind of melt away, they're going to dry up, they're going to shrink, and in the fall, they actually detach from the plant, and you just take a light rake, or you can just pick them up, and there's nothing to it. You have a 50th probably of the weight and volume if you wait till spring to do it. And it's not going to harm the plant to wait till spring. It's going to help you as you're back and all the extra work that you have to do. And so there's the only problem that I would do it in the fall is if I had a hosta that had a virus or a disease, I would get rid of that in the fall and not overwinter it, because come spring, you're going to have a lot of moisture, and the diseases could spread. So
Okay.
I'm going to
Is this one of those instances where sometimes leaving the foliage will protect the crown in extreme temperatures?
and that's another thing. Yes, it shrivels or dries so much that it's not going to do a lot, but every little bit that will hold that snow as it's blowing across, or keep the ground frozen, keep the sun off from hitting the soil so it doesn't warm up, is going to help that hosta so it doesn't heave. Hostas are very, very hardy, but anything you can do to protect that crown is very important.
All right. Thank you, John.
Another thing I wanted to correct, we had talked about this, the white snakeroot. It is a perennial. It is not an annual. So, but you need to get the flowers off now, because you may have this one back and 10,000 more of them if you don't get this. If you don't get this off. But right now, being it rained just a little bit, they pull out. They're very shallow rooted, so they do pull out quite easily.
Okay. Get them now before you have a whole field of them to deal with.
You know what they are because you see that flower.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Ella, do you have another show and tell for us?
I do. I just want people to enjoy nature. And when you're out and walking, especially out in the woods now, there's a lot of dead stumps and things, and we're seeing the fall mushrooms. And Karen and I both have a friend who is obsessed with edible mushrooms. And so I sent her a picture of my mushrooms. We had a huge puffball. Now, Marilyn says that they're not tasty, but I did bring one that is so utterly beautiful. This is
Hold up just a little bit higher.
Hen
There
of
we
the
go.
Woods. And so this is a bracket fungi that grows on the side. And what's really neat is it's almost fluorescent yellow on underneath. Now, it was growing on a log that was laying on its side, and we've had a lot of rain at the beginning of the month, and this log was actually, the creek over flooded and it was underwater, so there was a lot of moisture in there, and that's what these mushrooms need here in the fall. There's so many different kinds, and they're just beautiful, and there's a lot of good guides out there online to help you identify mushrooms. And again, you want to be very careful about eating anything that is, foraged. But according to Marilyn, when they have kind of like these little pores on the bottom and not gills, they're more likely to be edible. I don't know. But it's so beautiful.
That
Like
is pretty.
sand.
Is it heavy? Is it really dense?
Oh, yes. And this one is supposed to be kind of like the texture of a portobello. It has substance.
Okay.
And our friend cooked some up today and ate it. So
We're waiting for tomorrow.
I was going to say, you'll have to let us know how that turns out.
All mushrooms are edible at least once.
At least once.
That's so right.
yeah.
Okay, Karen, did you have it? Oh, go ahead, John. Did you have another thing to add?
Puffballs are pretty tasty, but you have to get them early before they get real big because they dry out in the middle, and after they get real big, they're past their prime. But again, if you don't know your mushrooms, do not eat them.
Now for a puffball, if I see one, or I don't eat mushrooms, but how big is too big? What is the sweet spot?
I would say if it gets past 6 to 8 inches.
Okay.
I have basketball sized ones.
Yes, and those are if you would look inside, there's probably yellow powder already forming inside, and those are not tasty.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Karen, you're up.
All right. Well, my next thing to share is actually a nursery pot. So what I wanted to talk about is that in my yard, I just love big, sturdy nursery pots. And so what I utilize these for is this size. I actually, in the next month, when my annuals die down and my decorative pots outside, I will transfer the potting soil I have in those larger pots that are decorative and put them in smaller nursery black pots. And then I store all those pots under my deck and under the stairs where it doesn't get as much moisture, as much water penetrating through them, because I want to save that potting soil for next year. And my pots that I have outside, I don't want to leave them out through the winter because of the freezing and thawing and having them crack or break. And then I think they just start to age quickly.
They do.
Outside. Yeah. So that this way I shovel out what soil I have, I keep it from year to year, and then I'll use new soil with the old soil. And especially like if I've got a new pot, or like this year when I found a plant or a couple plants and I'm like, I didn't need them. And so I, created another container plant in my yard. That way, a big pot it's a lot of soil to fill that with. So I'll put that older soil in the bottom, or I'll just mix the old soil and the new soil. So I always have a stack of, good sized nursery pots that I'm either using for picking up waste in the yard, grass clippings, or like I said, for storing that potting soil for the next year.
I am a fan of those as well. I keep them all. My husband, in the spring, I'll go get everything and I'll have pots and everywhere. And he'll be like, you want me to gather these up and throw them away? And I'm like, do you want a divorce? Because they're so handy.
Also that I could add is at the nursery, if you do need some pots, we have certainly, we can help recycle some pots, but we also have pots available from our install crews, and we're pretty selective for the ones that we do reuse. So if someone needs some pots, especially for a club with a plant sale or something, check out your local garden center to see if they can work with you to supply you with a pot.
That's a great idea.
Another nice thing to do with some of those pots that you're not going to overkeep, the soil, is to put it on your compost pile, because it's full of microbes from being in that soil all year. Put it and mix it in your compost pile, because the brown matter and green matter need those microbes to be broken down.
Okay, wonderful. All right, John, we're back around to you with another question. This one's about hen and chicks. This is from, JLH. Hi, my hen and chicks have stalks growing from the middle. Do I have hen and chicks or another plant?
She has hen and chicks, and she's going to end up with a flower probably, if it doesn't freeze. They'll put up a single stalk, sometimes multiple stalks, and it's going to flower. Now, if it's coming out of the side, those are going to create the chicks. But if it's coming out of the middle and going up, that's usually a flower. And it takes a while for those to get mature enough for them to flower. So, and a lot of people don't see it because a lot of times they freeze out or they just go unnoticed because they won't bloom very long.
All right. So should you remove it? I mean, I guess it's the end of the year.
After it dries up, after the flower dries up, I would remove it but not before, because it doesn't harm the plant. The plant, once it gets to that stage, it's probably at its end stages of life, and you're going to probably see the little chicks coming out of it. And that's what you want to nurture on, and then take the mama one away, and it'll create room for the little chicks.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. All right, Ella, we are going to you. Let's see, 954. This is from Marilyn, and she wants to know, she says, I have several containers of plants, and I'm asking about this hydrangea and the mint lemon verbena planters. What can I do to keep these alive over the winter, and other potted perennials? Marilyn.
Okay, so Marilyn, the first thing is that you can keep the perennials and the shrubs in the same pot and move it into the garage. Now, you don't really need to do this until probably Thanksgiving. They can actually lose their leaves. What you want to do is protect the root system from freezing. That's where the damage occurs. The above ground portion of the plant can take rather cold temperatures. So if you don't have the room to move that large pot into your garage, you can then take out the individual components. If they're perennials or that hydrangea, they can be planted in a protected location in your garden or in your landscape, and then move back into the pot next spring again. The lemon verbena, I think, is also a perennial. So, you know, you could, again, just leave it in the pot or put it in the ground. If it were an annual, you would have to grow it inside as a houseplant, and it would require light. But the perennials and the hydrangea, once they've lost their leaves or gone dormant and died down, they just need winter protection. And that would be best accomplished in a garage or shed, something like that. And if your garage is heated, you might have to rethink that location.
Okay. Similar to that, we have another question from Mary Beth Finley. She writes, when is the best time to transplant a small hydrangea? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say spring would be the best time. That way you can take advantage of knowing that it's made it through the winter and that new growth. That's why I like, in the other question, just leaving the hydrangea in the pot and moving it and not actually disturbing it.
Okay. All right. Karen, we are back around to you. This is a question, let's see, we'll do 902, Emerald Green Arborvitae. Virginia writes, I have a border of Arborvitae that was planted 2 years ago. Recently, some trees have developed a black spot on the foliage. Same spots are about 5 inches in diameter. What is this, and what can I do to get rid of it? Now, originally her submission was in May, but you know, these kind of questions are evergreen. So what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, the picture would have probably helped a little bit to define it, because there is a condition with arborvitaes called black flagging. And so there's these phenomenons with the arborvitae that if there's no organism, insect, or mite causing the problem, that then some sort of stress is causing this discoloration on the plant. And then sometimes it's a little bit unknown. The good news is that even not knowing if this is a fungus or stress on the plant, it's not going to be fatal. So the big takeaway is, first off, prune out whatever's black or brown out of a plant. It'll look just so much better. If you're not sure what's going on, it's always a good idea just to swipe your pruner with a little bleach solution, 10% bleach solution, or a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and then go on and prune the rest out. The biggest thing I think that I heard with her submission was that they were only planted 2 years. Arborvitae are notoriously root bound when you get them, and then they are shallow rooted. So that kind of combination, They're to me a little bit slow to get a good root system to take drier times. So make sure you water deeply, water regularly during drier times. And then a little bit of fertilizer in spring would certainly be great for them.
Okay, we've got just under a minute. Wanted to know if anybody had any fast facts or fast tips for closing gardens, closing beds. We've got about 30 seconds. So whatever tips you've got, let's hear.
You know, we're losing a lot of leaves right now. And with the wind that we've been having, a lot of leaves are blowing up against shrubs and other places. I would get them mulched so that they don't compact. And if they're if you've got a lawn, which I don't have much of, but get them off the lawn because they will cause mold and mildews during the winter. But I would take your lawnmower and mulch them and then use them as mulch over your perennials.
Okay, Dream Team, any last comments?
Oh, celebrate Halloween with a pumpkin. You can make a mumpkin. Just put little holes in and put in some fresh flowers and you've got a mumpkin.
A mumpkin, I like that. We carved pumpkins last night, our first batch. So, all right, guys, we're out of time. It goes so fast. I appreciate your time and talents and show and tells today. And I appreciate you guys for watching and being patient with us through this pandemic. We're doing our best to still bring you that great content that we know that you love. And stick with us, and we'll see you next time. Good night.